I am announcing today that we are expanding the call of what they are going to be considering this week. And so, yes, they will be considering the congressional map, but they also will be considering termination of all special districts that were enacted in Florida prior to 1968, and that includes the Reedy Creek Improvement District.
All right, that might seem like a mouthful, but that is Governor DeSantis going after Disney and the special exemptions and autonomy it has taken advantage of and enjoyed for the better part right now of what, almost 60 years right now. Disney can essentially control its own zoning, has its own police and fire departments, but because of the entertainment powerhouse has opposed legislation in the state called the Parental Rights and Education Bill, what some call the Don't Say Gay law. It has incited the wrath of the governor of Florida because he claims that this is not nearly what it's presented to be, certainly by Disney, which is now threatened to withhold political campaign contributions in Florida. And this is a law that the governor says really is meant to teach issues on sexual identity and all of that, but not when you're in the kindergarten to the third grade. That you're way too young to be getting this type of education. And therein lies the back and forth. Let's get the read from the Lieutenant Governor of Florida, Jeanette Núñez, kind enough to join us right now. Governor, this is a battle of gargantuan players, obviously. Disney, a major employer in your state. But what if they decide to play hardball? What do you think, and where do you think this goes?
Well, really, Neil, playing hardball isn't what's at question here. This is about what's doing right for Floridians. And so when the governor included the issue of the districts as part of the discussions that they will be having this week during special session, it's about leveling the playing field. No other private corporation has the benefits of operating as its own governmental body. Imagine being spared the horrors of having to deal with the county's building department, trying to get a permit every time you're going to add to your parks. And so they've operated under this district with really very special privileges that no other private corporation has. And so the governor and many members of the legislature have questioned why Disney has that special privilege compared to, say, for example, Universal Studios. And so this is going to be a policy discussion, and it really is nothing more than that.
Well, it wasn't questioned before the company expressed concern about this parental rights and education bill, the so-called Don't Say Gay law, and that opposition not come up, none of this would be happening, right?
Well, I think certainly the governor has been very clear in his philosophy, generally speaking. When Disney decided to engage in what we were trying to accomplish, empowering parents and making sure that kids at a very young age, we're talking kindergartners to third graders, were not going to be indoctrinated, sexualizing topics, gender identity, all of those things that I think the vast majority of parents believe should not be taught in the classroom. Disney obviously reared its ugly head. They decided to engage in this back and forth, and then they doubled down and they said, on top of that, they were going to work actively to repeal the legislation. And so many members of the legislature were the first ones to question, why is Disney allowed to operate without any consideration for what other companies have to follow in terms of rules, regulations, and things of that nature?
All right, so this exemption, in your gut, Governor, do you think it's going to go away? I mean, and Disney could always come around and say, well, we'll emphasize Disneyland over Disney World. You obviously don't think that's going to happen. Disney World, of course, is a cash cow for them. But where do you see this going?
Well, I think that it'll be a very interesting debate that the legislature will have. I believe that there is an appetite to be able to rescind this district and allow for them to make their case. Certainly, there's an opportunity to come back before the legislature and prove why it's necessary, prove why it is important for the benefit of Floridians. But again, I think it ultimately has to come down to what's in the best interest of Floridians, not necessarily what's in the best interest of corporations. The two are not mutually exclusive, and we want to make sure that we're always putting Floridians first. So this will clearly have its day. It will be debated, it will be discussed, there'll be all kinds of back and forth, but I think that ultimately what the legislature will do, I believe that they will rescind it, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So if they, Disney World, Disney through the parent company, were to say, all right, we won't be fighting this, we're not keen on this new law, but we won't be fighting it, would that be enough to protect the special status, because they could turn around and say we generate a great deal of revenue for Florida. Floridians benefit from our presence, get special exemptions themselves, being Floridians at our park. What do you say?
So clearly those that are in the decision-making process in the legislative body, they'll have to decide what is the right course of action. But again, I don't want to put the two issues head to head, because I think that there is something to be discussed. Why should a corporation have special privileges that no other corporation has in this state? And so I think
they, as you know,
the
Governor,
parents' rights
they,
and
as you know,
education,
turn it around and say, well, because no other company does for Florida what we do, or generates the interest or the money or the revenue that we do.
Well, I think certainly Universal Studios would like to argue that they are perhaps not on par, but pretty close to it. They have a lot of tourism that comes to their parks. But regardless, whether it's on par or not, I think the important thing is, I think Floridians should demand to know, why is there a special privilege that no other corporation has given to this company in particular? And who's next? Could somebody else come to the legislature?
But that
and
privilege
get this
would go,
deal?
rescinding that privilege would go if they stopped fighting this law. Do I interpret that correctly?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think clearly they've made their statement as it relates to this law. And one thing again is the two are not the same. So I think that there will be a discussion, and the legislature will agree to adopt or not adopt this particular legislation. And so those conversations, they will probably continue on for a long time. Parents' rights and education, I think that their silence as it relates to joining the lawsuit is telling. But I also think that there is an appetite to discuss this rescinding of this district regardless.
That's a fascinating development. Governor, thank you very much for taking the time. The Lieutenant Governor of the beautiful state of Florida, Jeanette Núñez.